welcome to Dysfictional, an RPG-focused podcast. I'm Ginger, professional film industry victim.
I am Tukey, former academic gone ranger.
And I'm Randy, and I acquired a book.
Whoa. What kind of book?
I don't know. Doesn't feel very good to hold, but I'm working on reading it.
Wait, you can read?
Yeah.
Wait, Randy, this is very important. Does it say Necronomicon on the front of it?
No, but it is. I can't read it. It's in some sort of weird language. It's fine.
Oh, I knew he couldn't read.
Randy, put the book back.
I can't.
Put the
I don't
book
want
down.
to.
I'm sure it's fine.
Put the book down.
I've already attuned to it.
Randy, put the book down.
I don't feel so good.
Oh, no.
My head hurts.
I guess we'll just do the podcast without him.
Randy is probably going to die soon, but you know, it's okay because if you die, it was a one-shot.
Is that what that means? I feel like I died in regular campaigns.
True, but we are coming up. It is October. It is spooky season, and we are coming up on my absolute favorite time of year, Halloween one-shots, or as I like to call it, one-shot season, because there is no better night to run a one-shot than Halloween.
Ow. Sorry, suddenly like the animals around me are quite violent.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Most kidding aside.
Anyway.
Halloween, in my opinion, is the absolute best time for one-shots. And of course, the horror-themed ones are the best. Everyone has a personal sleep paralysis demon, for example. And who wouldn't want to throw them at their players?
Me.
You? Why?
I definitely would.
Why not?
Eh.
Yeah. I thought maybe tonight we could workshop a few fun one-shot ideas together.
Yeah, it sounds like a swell time.
It was a dark and stormy night on the edge of town. Are you ready? It's starting. Come with me into my one-shot idea.
If you want to live. Oh.
Ooh.
Ooh. Okay, picture this. Far below, in the valley, you can see the flickering lanterns in the windows of all of the townsfolk who are safe and warm from the rain. But there will be no rest for the party because they have been tasked with climbing the cliff face.
No.
To infiltrate the town's outlying resident haunted castle.
No, my strength is 8.
Get a rope. On this, the night of the solstice, the wailing spirits and mysterious lights drift down from the ancient tower. Okay, so my idea is that the party has to enter a castle ruin to cleanse the area of what the townsfolk think are ghosts. And of course, there will be some ghosts because, you know, it's a Halloween one-shot. There have to be ghosts. But the main crux of the one-shot is that there will be a lot of traps specifically designed to split the party members away from each other, but only for short periods of time. And whenever a party member is alone, they will find themselves face-to-face with a copy of themselves. And if they fail to resist possession, a spirit will whisk them away. The player will receive a secret message from the DM via whisper, and then their doppelganger will rejoin the party when they meet up in the next room. Whoever ends the night with the most characters alive wins, me or them.
Yay.
Loosely inspired by a movie also called Them, which I found to be truly horrifying. Basically, if I win, doppelgangers get to take over the town, and if the players win, well, how would they know?
This also gives me Scooby-Doo vibes for some reason with the initial concept of, oh yeah, no, it's a great idea. Everyone split up and look around.
Well, I am assuming that they're going to need to be forcibly split up, which is why I want to build in a lot of traps and like secret passageway, which again is also very Scooby-Doo, like the rotating wall panel, you know, the pitfall, trapdoor in the floor, those kind of things.
You can kind of DM anything, so you could make it where only, let's say, one of the player species, like elves, can enter this area automatically, forcing them away. You could do other things where, like you said, that kind of trap I think would be a good idea. You could even do something where it really entices one person, but maybe not the others, but they're going to do it anyway. Like the stoner guy when he's like, oh, drugs, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
I like the idea that there's a lose condition as well, that, and it's like you spell it out right in the beginning, right? So like everyone, it sounds like everyone would know when it starts. Well, I don't know, unless the doppelganger thing was supposed to be a secret, but if if it's a lose condition that maybe everyone knows about at the beginning, it's like very clear that you might not win, basically. Like it's said in the beginning, like you could lose, but that's the fun of it.
I think it would definitely be the premise that the goal is to defeat the party, get everybody nice and on edge and have them expecting to see, crazier stuff. But as it goes, the only things they really see will be like the traps, the maze, the ghosts, and maybe like a few other sort of, creepy creatures along the way for flavor. But what they're not going to realize is that they're being slowly infiltrated by the real big bads of the campaign. The reason I like this idea is that it comes down to the players that are turned to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Because they have to act like they're acting like themselves, but not exactly.
That I was wondering, so these doppelgangers, can the players
sabotage?
No, but can the other players who are still alive figure it out and like do something about it? Get something back?
I don't know. Can they? It's up to them. Theoretically, yes. I think it would be really fun to like have one get exposed. You could even have a certain trap or a certain type of ability that would expose one in a certain circumstance or something. But yeah, there would definitely need to be clues to make it fair. But I think it could be fun either way for both the player that was playing the doppelganger to like play around and see if they could entice their other players to, come along with them and like add to their numbers, or the regular players to figure it out and defeat them.
You could even have it play into other supernaturals, like maybe they pass by a mirror and they don't have a reflection. So that could be a tip to the player, like the good player that, oh my God, that's not who I think it is, and other stuff like that. That'd be a lot of fun, actually, because it adds that depth that you didn't, like a horror that you didn't realize was a horror, like another layer.
Exactly.
That'd be neat.
Is it a little bit Among Us? Yes. But we all love Among Us.
Yeah, that'd be a fun idea. I'm totally for it.
What about you guys? You got any cool one-shot ideas for us?
Yeah, so mine is super simple, but I've got a lot of details to it, so I'll go over it. It's based off of Saw, just to make it easy.
Of course it is.
What?
Yeah. So for kind of the details of it, this is more in the form of a DM. Like the players won't know much of the info, but they'd have to learn it, kind of like what kind of trap they're in and stuff like that. But the group was sent out to kill the puzzler. As they were preparing to head out, the puzzler knocked them all out. Whether it was sleeping gas, spells, or charms, they each woke up in a different location. Play this likely in order of the events I'm kind of about to go over. They will happen at the same time, but if players are fast enough, they can help the next group. So, and I've got this set for 4, 5, and 6 players at least. If you have 5 players, you've got this trap here where one of them is at the end of a hallway. They've got everyone's equipment, but they're heavily encumbered. It's a 30-foot hallway with 4 traps throughout, wire traps specifically, and 2 pressure plate traps as well. Each of them will trigger like a crossbow or like poison needle trap. They'll have to travel with disadvantage on dex checks and a lower speed due to the heavy encumberment. The best option here is to probably use dash. A rogue is a good choice to place here as they can disable traps, but it'll take up a lot of time if they do it as well. But they'll have an easier time avoiding traps, so they could speed through it as well to try to help out the next group, which is 2 players being trapped within a pit with nothing on them. They have a high enough...
Are there snakes?
No, but there is poisonous gas that's starting to fill up that pit.
Oh, jeez.
I knew it.
I know. It's high enough that it'll require a boost and a jump from one of the players, so the other one's basically just left to die. At the top, there is a rope once one player gets up, but it's not long enough to reach the other player without some other assistance. So likely requiring the single party member or someone else. They could probably, have their own ideas to it, but this is a puzzle, so they could kind of figure out other details, like taking off their shirt and making the rope longer, something like that.
Note to self, anytime Randy runs a one-shot, give my character poison immunity or spider climb or both.
Hey. No. Good luck.
And a really long shirt.
Nope, because good luck with this last one, as 2 other players are on each side of a 15 cube room. One is under a net trap and the other one is stuck in a bear trap with some damage already taken. Likely you'll want a player with the lowest strength in the net, or make the net stronger, kind of like change or something. The other player has a bladed gauntlet attached to their arm that they can't remove.
Oh, no.
I know. That player has already added pressure to a pressure plate. So once they get off of it, they'll have about 6 seconds to cut or remove the rope and get out of the room before the fiery blast trap activates. And if you're using chains, like something heavier, I would change that to like a button or something that's about 5 feet away from the netted player so that they still have to be the one to get them out of that net trap. There is the chance that the person in the net can get themselves out, which is great because then that makes that kind of encounter easier. But if you have 6 players, I'd add another one to the pit or the hallway. The pit, I would add kind of a collapsing roof that activates as the first or second player leaves, leaving only one player at the pit, as that floor will now be a pressure plate that requires more weight than any one of those people. It adds additional counter to this because the solo player that has all the equipment could just throw the equipment down there and it could give them more time to deal with the other stuff aside from the poison growing up. The hallway is unchanged if the additional person's in the hallway, but it could make this just generally easier because you could separate the weight. One person could just blitz through, perhaps die to all the traps, and then just let the other person just ease in, kind of whatever way they want to do that. At the end, you could add constructs like animated armor or animated tables if you want more combat, but this is more puzzle themed one shot. But you will, regardless, face the puzzler, who's a transmutator wizard who believes that changing mutation is the true path of enlightenment. Yeah. And if you need a simple motive, I would just say that he captured the players because they were going to kill him. And he used them to kind of test out traps. But I think for some more personal reasons, like you could have another wizard or spellcaster and he finds their magic inferior to transmutation and just wants to punish them. Or he could view all martial characters as barbaric and wants to teach them a lesson.
I like this idea because it's already very thought through. Like I feel like a lot of people could pick this up with some minor changes and it would probably take an entire night.
Change traps and stuff. Yeah, easy.
But I also don't like it because this is basically reinforcing the fact that you are always thinking of ways to kill us as the DM. Yeah. And we now have proof of it on the podcast.
It's just innately in me, and even more so now that I have this book.
Oh yeah, the book.
Oh my God. I will say one thing that I think is pretty diabolical about it is that you've basically built in a mechanic where it benefits the players to dump all their equipment right before a big boss fight.
Mm-hmm.
So good job on that one.
Yeah, and the player down the hallway could just dump all the equipment immediately because then obviously the hallway would be a lot easier, but then you don't have any of your equipment. So it's, what are we going to do? But then again, he could grab everyone else and then go back and grab the equipment. So there is that to consider as well, that if they thought about that, but then they still have to deal with the traps if he didn't disable them.
The other thing is that you're both simultaneously encouraging and discouraging collaboration, right? Because some of the traps that you described, helping the other person could mean you die, but they get out.
Yeah.
Or maybe you come up with a strategy good enough to where both of them can somehow make it out. So that's going to be some personal choices, and they'll have to real quick think about whatever their character, personality is and think about what they would do.
Yeah. And while especially later on in the Saw movies and stuff, they were kind of meant to die. And this one isn't, I think this one's more meant to kill the players rather than teach a person a lesson, like the original Saw movies. He still had ones where there's 2 people there and both people can survive, but one of them does have to suffer more than the other, especially if you think of the house where all of them could have lived, or the one where, I think it was in later movies, where they were each very greedy people and pretty much one by one were getting offed. And at the very end, they had to each provide 1 pint, I think it was 1 pint of blood, but there's only 2 of them left. So they had to give basically enough that would kill both of them. So had they all been alive and working together, that last trap would have been either the easiest or the hardest, which I thought was really cool. And that's kind of what I themed with this as well, is will one of you be willing to sacrifice yourself for the other? And potentially you could still get that other person out, because I don't want players to die, but they do run the risk of it as well, because I want everyone to succeed. That's kind of my thing, but I want it to be a challenge. I want people to either care about each other or be a character that chooses not to care about the other one.
Decisions.
What about you?
Nice.
Me?
Yeah, Tukey, wow us with your scary imagination one-shot idea.
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely went really spooky with mine, and not comical at all. Yeah, so my...
I love dark humor.
I mean, that's fair. My ideas are definitely not as detailed as yours, but I have like 3 or 4 thoughts / initial starts. So, all right, let me start with the first one. First one is either called Zombie Takeover or Zombie Revenge. Initial setup for both of them, they basically start the same way, but it's just the goal or mission is what determines which one you go with. So the players awake in a crypt together to find themselves now as undead monsters. They happen to have been a former adventuring party that was felled some years ago, but they have no idea how long it has been. They were the last on a mission. They do remember their last mission. Their last mission was a local town had hired them to basically stop a lich that was nearby causing problems for them. But they failed the mission and were killed by the lich. Now, this is where the path can diverge. So perhaps they felled the lich as well, and now their motivation is actually more led by their zombie nature to get revenge on the town for sending them out on the mission, which killed them. In that regard, it would be the zombie takeover option, where they would basically work together to go back and infiltrate the town and spread the zombie curse, because we're going to make it a curse in this case. So everyone would basically have some sort of skill that allows them on like some kind of con save to the enemy they attack to turn them into a zombie too. And their goal would be to infiltrate and take over as much of the town as they can before the end of the night, essentially. All the players would be, because they were a former adventuring party, so it could be they'd kind of retain some of their skills and everything from their past life. So basically, people could pick whatever they want. Most likely it would be a low-level campaign. And that's how it would kick off for that one. The alternative, this is the zombie revenge one, is that the lich is actually still alive, and the goal is to actually hide the fact that they're zombies. This is where the comical part would come into play. Hide the fact that they're zombies, get back to the town, get information on where the lich is currently, and go after the lich to finally put a stop to them in their second life. It would be a lot of shenanigans around covering up the fact that you're a zombie.
I could see mid-conversation of that one where they're just talking. It's like, oh, by the way, you got any like brains around? I'm kind of hungry.
Yes.
You know? I mean, nothing. So, you attached to that goat?
Like, I don't know, man. I woke up hungry.
I do think the first one sounds especially like would definitely be a skill challenge type of one shot where they have to go through stealth or some sort of charisma style, kind of styles like that. They could also have to try to ambush, maybe work together. I mean, if they run the risk of them getting noticed or something, they'd have combat encounters they'd have to deal with of just mostly townspeople. But I think it'd be cool as they're spreading it though, they actually gain those zombies as kind of
like companions almost, maybe.
Like companions that they can't necessarily control. If let's say they're a horde, they'll move with the horde. So as long as the entire group stays together, those will stay together. But if they separate, then the other ones will separate. So to kind of have a mix of both where like if they separate, then you could obviously cover more ground, but you're weaker with fewer numbers. But if you're together, then you're much more easily probably spotted out that there's a weird group going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, there would be a lot of options here, right? Because they probably wouldn't be able to really heal, we'll say.
No.
So do they go, maybe you present them 5 options of places they can go and they choose the order. Maybe one of them is the guard area. Do they try to deal with them first while they're at full health, or do they try to deal with them after as there's more chaos going on in the town? So a lot of different ways you could approach it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like having to kind of account for the attrition as you go. That's a fun way to do it.
I would also add in that the players, like, at minimum get the undead fortitude, that if they are knocked to 0, they can roll a con and they can get back up if they succeed it. And then they could,
Yeah.
the DC increases each time, I believe. But even regardless, like that at least give them more opportunities to get up. And if they do die, they could take over another zombie. So like it's almost like a second life. I think I would do one of those, but probably not both, because then death means nothing. Like
Yeah.
kind of joke of that. But have an undead fortitude, or if they die, they take over another zombie. I think either one of those would be a lot of fun, especially because you could be like, all right, now you're this zombie, but you're nowhere near the party. That'd be kind of interesting.
I also like the idea of having them basically retain like more or less some of their stats and stuff from being adventurers, because it's fun to come in and be a monster, but you also still want to be able to like create your character, you know, even if
Yeah.
it's for a one shot and not just go off like a monster block. So that would be really fun. But if I was going to be a player in that one shot and I knew that we were going to turn into zombies, I would definitely make it as difficult on myself as possible. And I would be like the cleric that turned into a zombie and like now my own magic burns me or something.
Oh, no.
Like, this spell isn't working. Also, I'm really hungry.
And I mean, the fact that they don't need to sleep and stuff gives a good advantage with them, that they could make it somewhat of a long term, almost like destroying, say, their crops or something like that if they were going more against the people. If they're going against a lich, I feel like that's a lot harder, and they probably have to be a higher level because liches are actually pretty powerful.
Sticking with the comedy, it would be funny if I'm thinking about, it's like early on in Soul Eater where like they go to kill the witch and it's like this little kid.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, you finally find the lich and it's like this all powerful lich supposedly, but then it's just some kid that like accidentally read the wrong book one day.
Yeah. Some like kid necromancer.
Yeah. They're not really that strong, but they still have some powers.
That's a good point. If it is a comedy, that might actually not be a bad idea. Or as you're trying to go through the townspeople and convince them and stuff like that, you get like a level 20 character that just happens to hear it. And when you go fight the lich is already dead with that hero there. That'd be kind of funny too.
Personally, I like the comedy aspect with the horror theme.
Absolutely. Not everyone wants to be stuck in a saw trap all the time.
That is true. I did have another one, though, and this one was a little bit more serious. So this other one is called Pumpkin Feeding Ground.
Ooh.
Small town where a lot of people are going missing. Kind of a cliche little story, right? But your group is visiting this town, basically tasked with figuring out the mystery of where these people are going and what's happening. Nothing is new in the town, except for some reason there's a little bit better of a pumpkin harvest this year. I don't know, just bigger pumpkins than normal. Seems like a good thing to me. But the group will basically slowly get information, and eventually they'd be led towards figuring out that there's some sort of evil corruption or something going on at a local farm. And this is one where I think the DM would most likely kind of be misleading with it, in a sense. So the players would probably most likely be suspecting the farm owners or something like that maybe they're the ones responsible. But in reality, the actual thing going on is that all of the pumpkins, in sort of a jack-o'-lantern style look, would actually be more a hive mind of monsters, very similar to mind flayers in a sense.
Maybe like the big boss is a scarecrow?
It could be. And the scarecrow could be in charge, and maybe it's connected to all these pumpkins, these jack-o'-lanterns, which is taking over the people, forcing the farm owners to do things mysteriously too. And, did I mention that the pumpkins would probably be eating people as well?
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah, this one would not. This one doesn't have to be comical. This one could actually be more serious too.
You could easily make it comical, but I do like the idea of kind of like a hive mind of it, because then you could also have it where like as they're randomly running around eating people, it doesn't feel random. It feels very targeted and stuff. And you're like, okay, something's going on because they just swarmed this little child. And that doesn't seem like the right thing. They found me up on the roof, and how do they even know how to climb, you know?
Oh, see, that would be really creepy. I could see it if it was like a movie. it would be like, you're taking your kid to the pumpkin patch to get pictures. The kid wanders off because there's a pumpkin that's like waving its vine at it. And the kid like wanders over to the pumpkin. And then everyone's like, where's Timmy? And then pumpkin ate Timmy.
Oh,
Or as you're taking the picture, the snapshot is Timmy being eaten.
old Betsy, who actually won the largest pumpkin contest this year, was the first one to go missing too.
Oh, no.
nom.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Betsy.
Not all NPCs can be saved, folks.
I feel like Becky, farm daughter from our Flash Round a long time ago, would be perfect for this one shot, especially with her pumpkins. But she's like a pumpkin spice cleric. I feel like she needs to be in this one shot,
Oh, that's true.
right?
She,
Call back to Becky.
if she's not like a player character, she's at the very least like one of the main NPCs. Like she's in charge of the town or something.
Or she's like the high dark cleric of the pumpkin king.
Oh,
Maybe she wanted the ultimate pumpkin spice and then it just turned into killer pumpkins.
she went too far.
I'm saying.
Well, I got one more. This one can be quick. We don't have to go too much into it, but I got to get an isekai in here, right?
I was
So this
wondering.
Yeah. So this one I call. I was at a D&D themed Halloween party and then suddenly got transported into another world as my D&D character. That's the title.
Yay.
And as the title implies, you're at a Halloween party and it happens to be a D&D themed Halloween party. Even the DM is
What
there.
are the odds?
And the DM seems to be playing someone dressed as a dragon. Isn't that crazy?
What?
Suddenly,
Whoa.
the whole group is transported to another world, and they are now whatever character class they were dressed up as at the party.
I'm a barbarian and I'm skinny.
This one would also be comical. It would be mostly making them overpowered, because any isekai show always has the main character be overpowered. So they'd mostly be overpowered, going through standard little adventures. Maybe they're at a castle and they're told they have to go slay a monster that's threatening the town, and they'll go about their one shot, and lo and behold, the whole end boss will be the DM character who was at the party transported to the world, now an actual dragon.
I love
Nice.
Very loose idea, would be comical, but that's the isekai.
You could actually throw your Halloween party and then
Correct.
everyone has to pick based on their literal costume, which I love.
It also reminds me of my Turtle one shot where instead of being painters, you guys were like German composers or something as far as your names were. And you guys were level 1 Turtles and you were unknowingly given like basically legendary and super rare and artifact item weapons. And the first time one of you got like used it against basically a level like CR half guy, he was just obliterated. And the guy literally looked at like the thunder spear, was like, holy crap. And then it was kind of just a fun little chaos of, you know, level 1 Turtles just kind of obliterating an entire thieves guild pretty much.
Level 1 Turtles with vestiges of divergence.
Basically, because like they had stolen the stuff and they heard that it was there. They just wanted to get the stuff back and they were trying to be reasonable. And then like combat happened and then just obliteration. It was hilarious. I think that this one shot would be a similar kind of idea with that, where either they're secretly somehow level 20 characters, which would be chaos. It'd be really difficult, I think, to do a level 20 character, but like having super powerful items on a low level character, that way they have less skills to have to memorize.
And like ridiculous armor that just does everything.
Yeah.
When they first get there, they're given the mission and they have to choose. Each person chooses a weapon from a wall. And each of those weapons has some kind of crazy ability that they don't know when it activates.
Yeah.
That's so good. The last person, the DM, could be like a really powerful dragon, but perhaps the health is tweaked a bit. So they do a lot of damage, but they're easy enough to kill. That way the players do have kind of a chance. Maybe tweaking some of the stuff a little bit, or doing like a young dragon or something like that. But regardless, I think it'd be a fun little idea there.
you thought they were dressed as a dragon, but when you get there, it's actually like their cat.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's a bearded dragon. Like it's a monitor lizard.
Yeah, if you go the comedic route where like you do find out like, oh, you're just a potato sack, but like it's super powerful. Like, holy crap, this potato sack is throwing a potato and did like 30 damage to me. I'm already down. It's like, what's going on?
Or the whole time they're trying to be careful not to kill it because they think it could be their friend who was at the party. Halfway through, the friend comes out from like around the corner and in just their costume, and they're like, "Nah, I'm right here." Wait, then who's that?
And it's just a normal lizard.
That'd be a good twist too, where like the DM isn't actually the dragon and he's just there, but he's basically the deity of the group. So he's the one who does like 100 damage. He basically makes like them invulnerable to fire damage and all this other stuff, so they can actually kill the dragon. Or maybe he can't hurt the dragon, but he protects the party. One of those ways. I think that'd be kind of fun too, having the DM as a part of the group.
See,
that would be fun.
There you go. All you need is a little skeleton of an idea, and you can go all kinds of ways with it.
Yeah,
these were all fun. I would play literally any of these.
I wrote them all down. It's fine.
Uh-oh.
Yay!
But not the Saw one, right? You didn't write that one down.
Wait, but you didn't write them in the book, did you?
No. There's I've only done like 10 pages of this book. It's going to take me at least 75 more hours to finish this book.
Okay.
You should put the book down.
Yeah, Randy, put the book down. Randy,
just give it over.
Book.
Come on.
Randy,
no.
Randy,
no.
hand me the book.
No.
Randy,
no, I'll
hand
walk it
over
away.
the book. Randy.
Time for some dissectional, a segment where we discuss D&D monsters using facts and questions that no one was asking for. Maybe what we discuss will end up in a session near you. On tonight's menu is the legendary Aboleth. Well, only if you can withstand its tremendous psionic and physical attacks, that is. This mighty beast is no false albacore, as it can warp the very regions it resides in. As I always say, nothing scarier than a creature bigger than a room, heavier than a Ford F-150, not sponsored, and more than intelligent enough to beat you in a game of chess. Now, let's discuss it.
Yeah, you go.
But I'm going to mention about where it likes to live. So this creature, the Aboleth, usually requires a pretty large space. They're typically around 20 feet long, 6,500 pounds, could even reach up to 40 feet. And they're originally from far realms, but have since migrated to the prime material plane. But they're known to sort of live in areas like the Underdark, kind of subterranean lakes, or the rocky depths of the ocean. They tend to like environments that are potentially ancient Aboleth ruins, and typically very deep in, like I said, lakes or ocean areas. They are aquatic creatures.
Though despite being aquatic, they can breathe air, which is great. They're also eternal creatures, so they never truly die.
Whoa.
Their spirit instead returns to the plane of water to reform later. And they have a flawless memory, so all the knowledge that they've absorbed passes on to that creature. Kind of terrifying when you think about that. They also are not fans of the gods, and anything that the gods have done to them, they kind of retain that, just furthering their one day wanting to overthrow them.
Whoa.
That's crazy. Yeah, combining that deep racial memory and perfect recall with sort of like an evil, very ambitious mindset definitely makes this a scary creature. As our resident Subnautica fanatic and deep water monster obsessive, this is definitely one of my favorite monsters in all of D&D. It is the perfect water predator. It has a 40-foot swim speed, a massive upper size range, like you said, can be up to 40 feet long, tentacles, fins, its face with those lamprey-like teeth. This thing is like the scariest leech ever to live. They also have both upper and lower camouflage. Actually, it looks a lot like a mahi-mahi or a dolphin fish. It's sort of sea green on top and a pinkish color underneath. So that's interesting that it mimics something that would live in our ocean a little bit and in color scheme. But that also lends to the fact they didn't originally come from where you would find them now, as like places like the Glimmer Lake and the Underdark and other sort of more murky, darker areas where those colors don't actually reflect, kind of reinforces that this is not their original habitat, which I thought was really interesting. They are covered in a mucosal membrane that allows it to breathe. It is amphibious, though. So among its other properties are that mucus can do a whole lot of damage, which I'm sure Randy will talk about later.
Key.
But its one real weakness is coming onto land. So even though it's technically amphibious, once it leaves the safety of the lair, it does tend to dry out pretty quickly and become weakened. It's not a death knell for it. It can harden the mucous layer to trap moisture inside and keep from drying out completely. But if that layer was then to be pierced, it would die quickly from dehydration. But if I was going to buff this creature even more, I think that's its one chink in the armor is its land speed is only 10. It doesn't really have a good mechanic for traversing over land at all. So I would give it kind of a conversionary breathing system and maybe more prehensile type tentacles, more like octopus style, so that they could actually sort of walk for faster land travel. But, you know, with all the lair actions that it has access to, why would it ever leave?
Honestly, the fact that it even has a land speed is kind of scary given how crazy this thing is under the water. I mean, we've talked about some other creatures and monsters before that have really high intelligence. They typically don't have a lot of strength, right? But this one has both. This thing could hit you just as hard as it could take control of you. And it even does. You guys mentioned, that it can go up on the land. It typically does tend to leave its lair to surface to greet visitors, essentially, or worshippers of it. That's even sort of a bit of a cunning strategy for it, right? If it's going off to meet its worshippers on land. But yeah, I mean, this thing is, I don't know, it's kind of a beast.
Hop on in. The water's fine.
Yeah. And so I wanted to go back with the camo for a moment because the elemental plane of water is a bluish green water. So it already blends in with that. But the elemental plane is very plentiful with coral. So I imagine that the kind of pinkish color that it has might be to blend in with the coral. Just a little random fact to kind of add in there. As far as like the stat block, this creature is deadly. Like if you try to melee attack it, you might only be able to breathe underwater from now on until it's cured. And then if it hits you, you'll take acid damage unless you're actually in the water in the first place. So that's not fun. As Ginger mentioned, they're cruel, evil creatures. Their enslave feature reflects that for sure. They have no limit to how many they can enslave, and it's nearly permanent. While taking damage runs the risk of the thralls being freed, aside from, of course, killing them, the obvious kind of ways to free them, it means that they could create an entire civilization around themselves. Since it learns the desires of others by simply telepathic responses, it can manipulate thralls such that if they were ever able to be freed, they may not want to even leave it. If we combine that with effects from before, that they could cause those creatures to be unable to leave water, thus forcing them to stay within the lair because they'll die if they leave the water. They're the first creatures that we've discussed that have regional effects. Most notably, yeah, they can change the water around them and stuff. It's kind of something obvious you'd notice as you reach an aboleth layer. And I've done similar regional effects before, not with an aboleth, but I've done regional effects. But the most notable one with this one is that it can create illusionary images of itself, making it nearly impossible to sneak up upon it because it would ideally use its real body in a safe spot while it's using that illusionary image to traverse and basically make sure its thralls are doing well, which kind of ties into its lair actions because you're likely to find aboleth in said body of water, which unfortunately is where it's most deadly. They can cast phantasmal force against any number of creatures within 60 feet, making an ambush very likely to fail. And that alone is crazy because it'll create a huge chaos that they can then take advantage of.
That plus even more. I mean, it's basically a master of its domain, and its domain is a mile around its lair.
Yeah.
And of course, you just mentioned a few, but there's even more. I mean, even within a mile, it can essentially make underground surfaces slimy or wet, which makes them count as difficult terrain. So even just getting to this creature can be very challenging.
Half speed, baby.
Water sources within a mile of its lair can be supernaturally fouled, right, and cause poisoning. And these effects, the ones I just mentioned, plus some of the others, they don't even go away immediately when the creature dies. I think it takes like 3d10 dice or 3d10 days before they fade away. Like you mentioned already, the illusionary image it can do. It absorbs the knowledge/memories of what it's eating, which even furthers its mastery over its domain because it can know what's going on all around it by luring in adventurers or luring in people and eating them. And then it knows what's going on in that area. Just, again, more and more control, a full mile within its lair range, essentially.
And it doesn't even need to eat them because as long as it has control of one of those
That's true.
thralls, for example, like it knows what it knows. So,
Yeah, but why not eat them?
I mean, just good luck.
You know?
True.
It's a true cosmic horror.
So how would you kill the party, Tukey?
Me? Ooh, I would really try to... Okay, if I couldn't take over somebody, make a thrall out of someone in the party, I would make a thrall and then that person would be like a quest giver, right? Try to lure the party in, think they're saving whatever, or think they're getting like, this person's going to lead us to them and we're going to have an easy time, and just lure them down into the lair, and that reduced movement speed, take advantage of that, get some other enemies down there, and just have this thing probably trap it within a certain space. Because again, you don't want to let them stay ranged, right? So I would abuse the physical like strengths of it under the water.
Yeah, I would try to get as many people in my snot bubble as possible.
Well, how would you kill it then?
From land.
What?
I mean, you can lure it out, right? It can leave, but that would be really difficult. Like, I'm not entirely sure what my strat.
You'd have to give it a reason to leave.
Yeah, it's really smart.
It would definitely help to have the Ring of Mind shielding, which is currently my favorite item. And as my character is from the Underdark, I'm becoming more and more set in my conviction that that was the perfect item to have her have from her backstory. Because good Lord, everything down there wants to control your mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely try to either lure it out or somehow attempt to interfere with the lair in some way.
Yeah.
Basically make it have to go fix it.
I would mass destroy water, though it would require a 4th level spell to destroy a 5-foot cube, so that's probably really efficient. I actually had that idea I think you have where I would try to get a lot of, say, like poison or something that would just completely taint the water. One of the, I think, biggest weaknesses of the aboleth, it has almost no immunities or resistances. So if you could, say, poison the water, it's not resistant to it. So it's going to take that poison. It'll have to do something about that.
Ooh, this is like a fight fire with fire thing because you'd be poisoning the water it's poisoning.
A poisoner.
Yeah, exactly.
This would be a question, I guess, a DM rolling or maybe a deep lore dive into the elemental plane of water. But those mucosal layers usually are pretty sensitive to things like salt. And I don't know if they're a freshwater species specifically, because it seems like they turn the water brackish, but you could maybe potentially just like dump a bunch of salt in there or something else that would just sort of like attack the mucus.
Oh no.
I'd have to look up and see if the plane of water has a specification between salt and stuff. But I assume with coral, it emphasizes salt water, if I'm not mistaken. So with that alone, regardless, it does make it whatever kind of water, it's sort of terrain anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But you are right that if you switch the water types or kind of taint the water in another way, that could affect it too.
Or depending on what's feeding its lair, like if it was creek fed or something, you could just go your 1 mile downstream and be a busy little beaver and cut off its water supply.
Ooh, starve it out.
Oh, no. I mean, I just hope we never run into one of these things because this thing is just scary.
It's okay. I have the ring of mind shielding. I told you.
Yeah, I mean, this book talks all about it.
No, we told you to put that
Randy,
down.
Stop looking at the book.
Here, we'll distract you with something else.
Flash our own time, except instead of building bones of a character, we're gonna build a little spooky NPC stat block for Halloween.
Ooh.
Woo!
Our terrifying NPC tonight is going to be the Ghost of Jack. We're going to describe a lower CR, like probably around 5, but open up more options for more difficult encounters. And I'll start off as the Ghost of Jack is a skeletal ghost with a torn cloth over his torso that has different features of, Jack. He has a spine neck that leads up to a pumpkin head with green clown paint with a carrot nose. The clothes covers his torso as a spinal spring extends beyond it, and he's holding a knife and a lumber axe. And he also has a lantern on his side.
This sounds like all of my worst nightmares.
It is. To go a little bit more for anyone who wants to use him and sort of expand upon it, it is about Jack Torrance from The Shining, a jack-o'-lantern or a pumpkin king if you really want to, Jack Frost, Jack the Ripper, Jack in the Box, and Jack the Clown.
Which is a creepypasta reference just in case you're an old like me and you had to Google it.
I mean, Jack the Clown is also a Halloween Horror Nights thing, but yeah.
That's a lot of people's nightmares all in one.
Yeah. So, why don't you tell us about some of the stats there, Tiggy?
Oh, well, all right. So for creature type, I mean, I think this one's pretty obvious. No one would get this one wrong, that it would basically be an undead. For the ability scores, so this one, I'm not going to mention like the exact numbers because this could be kind of played around with depending on the level of the campaign that this is being used for. But I'm going to say very high strength. I think this thing was going to be definitely kind of brutish with all those background, or all those different characters being mixed together into this one. I think it's also going to have a pretty high constitution and even charisma, depending on what skills it has or what DCs it's going to need or what spells it's doing. I feel like this thing should not be super dexterous. I don't know. I'm thinking back to like all these old horror movies where the bad guy is just slowly but menacingly walking towards you with a dagger. So I'm going to say low dex.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and playing into the low dex as well, I think for its speeds, this one's tough because you want it to move fast, right? But as I just mentioned, a lot of times these monsters and movies don't really go that fast. So maybe it's slow. Maybe it starts off with a 30-foot walking speed, for example, potentially even a 30-foot flying speed. But maybe it has some other actions, we can get to those in a minute, that use its spring for movement. So maybe it can spring forward and make itself basically get to the group quicker. Or maybe it has some way to shed what is on it and start getting faster over time, perhaps as it takes damage.
Ooh, that's creepy. I like that.
Yeah. And Ginger, why or what is it doing this for? Why is it attacking us?
Oh no.
Well, I looked at the inspos from all of the different Jacks and I settled mainly on the original Jack-o'-lantern, who was a man, in case you don't know the legend, called Stingy Jack. He was a regular human man, but he was very old and cranky and stingy, as the lore implies, and he got the best of the devil a couple of times, tricked the devil into agreeing never to take his soul. So when he died, he tried to go to heaven and God wouldn't let him in because he was too wicked. And he tried to go to hell and the devil said, I promised I would never take your soul. And cursed him to be a ghost wandering around on earth for all eternity and gave him a coal from the fires of hell to light his lantern. So I like the idea that this is a cursed creature. This is like a ghost that has been cursed to roam. And I think that the curse can also extend to a lot of those other types of Jacks as well. They are bitter and angry from being cursed, and they just want revenge and violence on the people around them, upon the living. And he's got that glowing light in his chest is a coal from the fires of hell itself.
Oh my.
Ooh. As far as we're going to dip into features with him as well, kind of build out the stat block a little bit more, I think that it'll have some skill proficiencies in specifically stealth because, usually horror movie characters sneak up on you. Persuasion, because sometimes you might be going like, in the beginning, they're not probably so bad. And then intimidation, because as they run around trying to chase you and they go, you can run, you can't hide. You might feel like you can't hide, even though you're still going to try. As far as the resistances and immunities, it's going to be mostly a ghost stat block with like acid, fire, lightning, thunder, resist, like those kind of things. I'm going to put cold into a resist instead of an immunity because Jack Torrance was technically defeated by, freezing out at night. But if you're going for a higher challenge rating, the cold could probably become an immunity, as well as probably thunder, because horror movie monsters tend to be immune to the thunder jump scares that tend to happen as a part of their presence. They'll also have a dark vision of at least 60 feet. You could add blind sight at higher levels since it always seems to know where you're hiding. Although alternatively, the lantern that it has on its side could be a lantern of revealing, which reveals invisible creatures and stuff around it.
Yes.
As a sort of trait that, I don't know if you have, Ginger, but as a part of a trait would be the lantern that would have a bright light with a dim light that reveals invisible creatures and objects as well. So that'd be kind of a little cool idea there. And then it would just know the languages in you in life, whatever the DM kind of wants to pick out from there.
Yeah, I love that lantern idea.
Yeah. What other traits you got?
Well, I just had a few things. I didn't want to give it too much because we were doing sort of a mid-level kind of idea about it. But for special resistances, I thought potentially it could be resistant to psychic damage, mainly because all of the examples of Jacks that we were using as inspiration were all either like completely insane or very, very clever and like wouldn't be fooled by things by like illusions, and which doubles with the Lantern of Revealing, I think, quite nicely. I also feel like it should have an aura of unsettling presence. I think, a fear-based aura where maybe depending on your CR, you can adjust the radius, but maybe like at least 10 feet or up to even 30 feet, depending on how tough you want this guy to be. He could have a radiating fear-based aura around him, which would be really cool. And then going off of kind of what Tuki was saying about the speed, I think it would be fun to add a feature or automatic effect that it can trigger that I would call Hellish Spring, which is sort of that Jack in the Box lunge forward that we all know so well from video games.
That'll get him right to the group.
Maybe it like doubles its speed or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a jump, like a auto, like quick jump.
I think its resistance would be cool to add in more of an extra conditional, like maybe it has advantage on those conditions or something like that instead of a straight psychic resistance. Although I guess you could add like maybe specific psychic resistances that could be cool. I did have an additional trait where they could have a sunlight sensitivity. Some ghosts do have that. I figure because most creatures only attack at night, and it adds a vulnerability for the Jack Frost that instead of it having a direct fire damage vulnerability or weakness to it, that it would have a sunlight sensitivity, so it would prefer to attack at night.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of attacks, I think this Ghost of Jack here would have for sure a multi-attack. I think this could be scaled a little bit. Maybe it's 2 attacks early, but if you're doing a higher level campaign, maybe it becomes 3 or even 4. And I think what would be cool about this one though, because it's got so much potential influence from each of the different Jacks it makes up, is to give it a decent amount of weapons. So that multi-attack I'm thinking a special feature to it could be that for each of its attacks, it could switch weapons. So it essentially could attack twice with maybe the lumbering axe that it has, right? Or it can attack once with the axe and once with the dagger it has. And I think that'd be kind of cool to let it switch weapons.
Mhm.
And then each of the weapons, I think, could be flavored. So perhaps the axe could cause frightening, has a chance, it has a save, maybe like a wisdom save to frighten the opponent it hits. The dagger could be the Ripper and could have a bleed effect on it. It has like a con save to avoid it. And then Ginger, you mentioned a lantern. So maybe it's got like a staff with a lantern hanging on it. If it makes a successful hit, it has a chance to blind the person temporarily.
Or maybe it just grabs the lantern on its side and just hits it with it.
Yeah. Just smacks them right with it. But it'd be kind of cool to give them multi-attack and also let them hit with different weapons and give each one a little different property. And then this, I think, would be cool. I think I mentioned this before, but it has some slow speed. Perhaps it can make itself faster. This could be like a bonus action or a reaction or something. Maybe it's called Here's Johnny, and he could drop that heavy axe and increase his movement speed by 10 to 20 feet, whatever you'd like to make it.
Nice.
One other ability I think it could have is to summon some playful spirits. I know I'm taking a lot of inspiration from The Shining here, but maybe this ability summons 2 vengeful spirits who seek out and grapple enemies in an attempt to make them play with them.
Ooh.
And we'll say as a bonus, if you really wanted to have IRCR, it could gain some legendary actions, which I think it could use. One additional attack is kind of one of the baselines where you could use probably, as you said, Tuki, like your lumber axe or the knife for another attack. It could cast one of the other features, let's say the Here Johnny, which would cost maybe 2 of the actions. And then I also had another action that it could create if you really wanted to go crazy, where it's just called the Storm of Jack. It has a 60-foot range, and he can cast a 60-foot radius storm, basically. And you'll hear faint laughter within the storm, and it deals cold damage at the start of your turn, as well as a wisdom save, or you'll be frightened within it.
Spooky.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to meet him.
Yeah, you're never going to use this against us, right, Randy?
I've already written all this down.
Uh-oh.
It's all right. He was already in the book as well.
Wait, you still have that?
It's weird because, I thought we were creating this, but he was there. Oh, wait. I wrote him in the book.
No, stop writing into it.
Randy.
Hey, you made it to the end. Well, if you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at DysfictionalPod for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Demonon, on Spotify.
Happy Halloween, maybe.